And let me call up my co-conspirator in the initiative on the digital economy and the book, Andrew McAfee. And we'll just say a couple of words to wrap up and close. And I think I'm going to ask Andy to go first.
Hi again, everyone. It wouldn't be a day at MIT if there weren't some homework handed out, right? Don't worry, though. This is the fun kind of homework. At some point in the very near future, like this weekend, have a bunch of friends over and have a dinner party. This is honestly your homework. As you do that, tee up one question once the first glass of wine has been poured. Ask your dinner guests this question. Ask them seriously, what do you think have been the most important developments in human history? And give them about 4,000 years to work with. And just sit back and watch the fun happening. Because you're going to observe some, I've done this a bunch of times. It's amazing fun. And you notice that the responses break down into a few fairly predictable clusters. First of all, the philosophers will come out of the woodwork. And they'll talk about these new systems of thought that were a big deal in both the West and the East. And of course, people will say, look, the major stories of human history are stories about the world's great religions, which influenced how countless people view the world and how they live their lives. And then you get some more truculent people to chime in. You say, actually, what changes how people live their lives and how they view the world are the stories of great empires and conquests and wars that have cropped up all over the globe, all throughout thousands of years. You usually get some cheery soul who says, don't forget about the plagues. And then you get some more optimistic views of the world. People will talk about the opening up of the world via the great ages of discovery. You will hear about intellectual advances in the natural sciences and math and other areas. And some folk will talk about the flourishing of the arts that happened at different periods of time as well. One thing I've noticed, though, is at some point, if you've got enough of an MIT person, if you've got a geek at your dinner party, they'll ask a weird and somewhat annoying question. They'll say, well, what do the data say? In other words, we're having this philosophical argument where we're going back and forth. Are there data on this question, and maybe we should look at that data? And it turns out there actually is a lot of data on this question. You can look at how many people there have been over the course of history. This data goes back thousands of years. And Ian Morris, who's at Stanford, did a beautiful job to quantify what he calls social development. Over thousands of years, how advanced are the societies, the civilizations that we're creating? And when you do that, when you take that, I think it's an inherently MIT-ish and inherently geeky approach to this question, you learn two really important things. You learn, first of all, that none of this has mattered very much. You got thousands of years of wars and religions and philosophies and discoveries and just these allegedly major things that have happened. And on the stuff where we have data, they don't move the needle very much at all. The graph of human history is really, really boring. And then you notice at one point in time, it gets really, really interesting. And that point in time, let's not make any mistake, is a technology turning point in human history. It is the wake of the Industrial Revolution that changed the course of human. You notice how quickly the graph changes direction? This is not just correlation. I think this is a causation story as well. Morris agrees. He says the Industrial Revolution, this increase in muscle power that we started to get with the Watt steam engine and a bunch of other developments that happened in rapid succession, this, in his words, this made mockery out of everything that had come before. The conclusions that Erik and I came to as we talked to a lot of the people who you've met today, as we wrote the book, was that we are at a similarly big inflection point in human history. Bill Janeway said something very similar earlier today. The Industrial Revolution is the story about overcoming the limitations of our muscle power. Biggest deal going on that we've got so far. We're in the middle of the second machine age, overcoming the limitations of our mental power. Honestly, how could this not be as big a deal? And so with that, I'm going to turn it over back to Erik.
Thanks. And obviously, we do think it's a big deal. It's a huge deal. And when we hear about it, we hear two kinds of stories about what kind of a big deal it's going to be. The most common one, isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Why are you winking at me?
Notice I'm not paying attention to them anymore either.
Two kinds of stories about how these amazing technologies will affect the world. The one you hear a lot, especially among technologists at around MIT and Silicon Valley, is what I call the techno-utopian story. That, look at that, let me see if I can go backwards here. Yes, I can. Look at that chart going upward. If that's the inflection point in the first machine age, when we unleashed the limitations of muscle, just think what's happening, what we're doing with brains. But we've had some financial people here, and past performance is no guarantee of future results. So we have to put that disclaimer in there, because you also hear from another group, the stagnationists, the pessimists, who are pointing out what's happening with jobs. I showed you some of those data earlier, what's happening with median incomes. And the reality is, as I said earlier, there's no economic law that says that everyone's going to necessarily share in the growing pie that technology is creating. And these two groups, the utopians and the stagnationists, they go at each other, and you hear them debating. If you have a dinner party, they'll probably come out of the woodwork as well. But we think they're both wrong. And we think they essentially make the same mistake. Both of them have the mindset that technology is everything. Technology is going to drive us to this better world or this worse world, and all we need to do is sit back and watch and see what happens, that we have no control over our future. Andy and I disagree in a most fundamental way. We see technology as a tool. Technology is an incredibly powerful tool, and it's becoming more powerful by the millisecond, apparently. So as technology becomes more powerful, that gives us more freedom. It gives us more ability to change the world. It gives us more ability to shape the future. That's what tools do. And therefore, the answer is not whether technology is going to turn out to be good or turn out to be bad. That's the wrong question. The question is, what do we want technology to do? How are we going to use technology? And that's going to depend on our values. It's going to depend on our choices. It's going to depend on our understanding of what the capabilities of the technology are and how we want to use it to shape it going forward. You know, the grand challenges that our technology friends faced, whether it's the self-driving car or the Atlas robot, were terrific, and they are changing the world and giving us some tools that can change it even further. The initiative on the digital economy is to bring together a new grand challenge about how we're going to use these ferociously powerful tools that are now being put in our hands. We have to think about that. We can't be on autopilot unless we think hard about what our values are and how we're going to use it. We're not going to make the right decisions. Because at the end of the day, technology is not destiny. We shape our destiny. Thank you very much.